The girl no one claimed. At the far edge of the kingdom, where the stone roads gave up trying to be roads and surrendered to dust, there existed a place people only acknowledged when they had no other choice. It was not marked on official maps. Merchants did not brag of passing through it, and nobles pretended it did not exist. Yet it clung stubbornly to life like a weed growing through cracks in forgotten walls. The houses there leaned more than they stood, their wooden frames warped by years of neglect. Roofs sagged under patched thatch, and windows were often nothing more than holes stuffed with cloth. Smoke drifted lazily from crooked chimneys, carrying with it the scent of thin stew and burnt grain. It was a place where hope had worn thin, stretched too many times across too many empty bellies. People lived there, yes, but living was a generous word for what most endured. And among them there was a girl no one claimed. She had no name that anyone bothered to remember, no family that stood at her side, no history anyone cared to know. If she had once belonged somewhere, that somewhere had long since let her go. The villagers had a name for her, though. They called her Dragon Girls. It was not a name given with curiosity or wonder. It was not spoken with awe, nor even with fear that might have granted her a twisted kind of respect. It was a name shaped from mockery. A name meant to remind her and everyone else that she was not one of them. She did not remember when she first heard it. Perhaps it had always been there, whispered just loud enough for her to hear. Perhaps it had been shouted one day, followed by laughter that never quite stopped echoing. "Dragon girl," they would say. And they would laugh. The girl herself did not look entirely human, though the differences were subtle enough that they could be ignored, if anyone had cared to try. Her hair was a wild, tangled mass the color of ash after a fire, as though it had once burned and never quite recovered. It hung unevenly around her face, often matted with dust and dirt. No one had ever shown her how to care for it, and survival had always mattered more than appearances. Her eyes were the most striking thing about her. They were not the dull brown or gray of the villagers, nor the soft green of the fields beyond the town. Instead, they glowed faintly, like embers buried beneath cooling coals. In dim light, they seemed almost normal, but in darkness, they flickered with a quiet, unsettling warmth. It was not enough to illuminate anything, but it was enough to make people uncomfortable. And then there were the scales. They were faint, easy to miss unless one knew where to look. Along the edges of her arms, across her collarbones, sometimes visible along her cheek when the sunlight struck at just the right angle, small, delicate patches that shimmered like polished stone. Most days they were hidden beneath grime. Other days they caught the lights. Those were the days people stared. Those were the days people whispered. And those were the days she kept her head down and tried to disappear. But disappearing had never been her strength. She lived in the spaces between things. In the alleys where shadows gathered even at midday. In the gaps between buildings where the wind carried scraps of conversation and the occasional dropped crumb. She slept wherever she could, beneath broken carts, inside abandoned doorways, sometimes curled against the warm stones near a bakery's wall long after its ovens had cooled. She had learned quickly that being seen meant being noticed. And being noticed rarely meant anything good. Children were the worst. They were not yet burdened by the quiet restraint of adults, nor the exhaustion that dulled cruelty into indifference. Their laughter was sharp and bright, unfiltered by consequence. They would follow her sometimes, keeping just far enough away to feel safe. "Hey, dragon girl," one would shout. "Do you breathe fire?" another would add, grinning. "Show us, show us." When she didn't respond, they grew bolder. Pebbles would fly first, then stones. Not enough to truly harm, but enough to sting, enough to remind her that she did not belong. She had learned not to run immediately. Running made it a game. Instead, she would keep walking, slow and steady, as though their voices could not reach her, as though their laughter did not echo in her ears long after they had gone. But sometimes, when a stone struck too hard or a voice cut too deep, her control slipped. She would run then, and the laughter would follow. Adults were different. They did not chase her. They did not shout, at least not often. Their cruelty was quieter, more practiced. "Keep away from the stalls," a vendor would say without looking at her. "We don't want trouble." "Filthy thing," another might mutter under their breaths. "Should have been driven out long ago," someone else would add, just loud enough for her to hear. They did not throw stones. They did not need to. Their words were enough. Their looks were enough. Their refusal to see her as anything more than a problem was enough. There were times when she wondered if they would have preferred her to be a true monster. Something obvious. Something they could fear without guilt. Something they could hunt without hesitation. But she was neither fully human nor fully something else. And so they settled for mocking what they did not understand. It was easier that way. For them, not for her. Hunger was her constant companion. It was a presence that never truly left, only shifting in intensity. Some days it was a dull ache, a hollow space inside her that she had grown accustomed to ignoring. Other days it was sharper, a gnawing pain that twisted her insides and made it difficult to think of anything else. And then there were days like today. Days when hunger was everything. It filled her thoughts, her senses, her very bones. It made the world feel distant and unreal, as though she were moving through a dream that might shatter at any moment. She had not eaten in 2 days. Not truly. A scrap of moldy bread the day before that had barely counted. It had sat heavy in her stomach for a time, tricking her body into thinking it had been fed, but the illusion had not lasted. Now even the rats seemed quicker than her. She had tried earlier. A small one darting between crates behind a storage shed. She had waited, watching, her breath shallow and controlled. Timing mattered, energy mattered, every movement had to count. But when she lunged, her body had betrayed her. Too slow. Too weak. The rat had slipped away, vanishing into a crack too small for her to follow. She had stared at the empty space for a long moment, her hands trembling not from fear but from frustration. From hunger. From the quiet, creeping realization that she was losing. She could not remember the last time she had felt full. Truly full. The memory existed somewhere, buried beneath layers of need and survival, but it felt distant, unreal, like something that had happened to someone else. Perhaps it had. Perhaps the girl who had once known what it meant to be full had disappeared long ago. Replaced by this one. The one who counted crumbs as fortune. The one who measured days not by time, but by how long she could endure. The one who kept moving because stopping meant thinking. And thinking meant remembering. And remembering hurts. The sun dipped lower in the sky, painting the edges of the town in muted gold. Shadows stretched longer, merging with one another until the alleys became pools of darkness. It was around this time that the smells began. Food. Real food. The marketplace came alive in the evening as it always did. Lanterns were lit, their soft glow casting warmth over the rough wooden tables. Vendors called out their wares, voices carrying through the cooling air. Bread fresh from the ovens. Meat roasted over open flames. Vegetables simmering in thick, fragrant stews. The scents drifted through the town, curling into every corner, slipping into every hidden space. They found her as they always did. Her stomach clenched painfully, a sharp reminder of its emptiness. She closed her eyes for a moment, breathing in. It was a mistake. Smelling only made it worse. But she could not help herself. Hunger pulled her forward, step by step, until she found herself at the edge of the marketplace. She knew better than to go further. She always knew better. But knowing did not always mean stopping. She lingered at the boundary, half hidden in shadow, close enough to see but far enough that she could pretend she was not truly there. People filled the space. Families gathered around tables, sharing meals and laughter. Friends leaned close, voices overlapping as they spoke of their days. Travelers sat apart, watching the crowd with cautious eyes. It was a world she did not belong to. A world she observed but never entered. Her gaze moved from table to table, drawn not to the people but to the food. A loaf of bread torn into thick pieces. A platter of roasted meat glistening with juices. A bowl of stew, steam rising in soft curls. Her mouth watered painfully. She swallowed, but it did nothing to ease the ache. For a moment, she considered leaving. Turning away. Finding some darker corner where the smells could not reach her. But her feet did not move. They rarely did when hunger was this strong. She stood there, caught between instinct and caution. And then, a look. The word cut through the hum of conversation. Her body stiffened instantly. She knew that tone. Look, the voice repeated louder this time, the dragon starving again. Laughter followed. Not loud. Not yet. But enough. Her shoulders hunched slightly, her gaze dropping to the ground. If she did not react, sometimes they lost interest. Sometimes, maybe she'll breathe fire if we tease her, another voice added, amusement thick in their words. More laughter. It spread quickly, rippling through the nearby tables. She remained still. Invisible. That was the goal. Always. Invisible. A piece of bread arced through the air, landing a few paces in front of her with a soft thud. It rolled once, then settled. Her eyes locked onto it immediately. It was not much. A crust. Hard at the edges, slightly cracked, but still bread. Still food. Her stomach twisted sharply. Go on, someone called, fetch. The laughter grew louder. She hesitated. Every instinct warned her. This was a game. A trap. But hunger did not care about traps. Hunger did not care about dignity. Hunger only cared about survival. Slowly, cautiously, she stepped forward. One step, then another. The crowd watched. Waiting. She crouched, reaching out with trembling fingers. Her hand closed around the bread. Relief surged through her, brief, fleeting but real. She had it. Food. She lifted it slightly, preparing to eat. A heavy boot came down, crushing the bread into the dirt. She froze. For a moment, she did not understand. Her mind struggled to catch up, to process what had happened. Then the laughter hit. Louder now. Sharper. Not so fast, beast. The word stung. Beast. Her hand remained where it was, hovering just above the ground. The crushed bread lay beneath the boot, ground into the dust. Ruined. Gone. Her fingers curled slowly, pressing into the dirt. She could feel it, grains of sand, small stones, the faint dampness beneath the surface. Her throat tightened. She did not look up. Looking up would make it worse. Looking up would show them her face. And faces invited more laughter. Her body trembled. Not from anger. Not even from fear. From exhaustion. From hunger. From the crushing weight of it all. For a fleeting moment, something stirred deep inside her. Heat, faint, unsteady. It flickered like a dying flame. Her breath caught. She knew that feeling. It came sometimes when her emotions ran too high. When the line between control and chaos blurred. But it was weak now. Too weak. Just like her. The heat faded, leaving only emptiness behind. The laughter continued. It echoed around her, filling the space, pressing in from all sides. She closed her eyes. Just for a moment. Just to escape it. And then, silence. It was not immediate. Not complete. But it spread like ripples in still water. One voice faltered. Then another's. The laughter thinned, confusion replacing amusement. The girl's eyes opened slowly. Something had changed. She could feel it. A shift in the air. A break in the patterns. She did not move. Did not look up. But she listened. Footsteps. Steady. Unhurried. Approaching. The crowd parted not willingly but instinctively. There was no command. No raised voice. Yet space was made. The footsteps stopped nearby. Close. Too close. Her body tensed, bracing for what would come next. A kick. A shove. Another round of laughters. She had learned to expect it. To prepare for it. But instead, a voice. Move. It was not loud. Not harsh. But it carried. Simple. Certain. And somehow that made it impossible to ignore. There was a pause. Then the sound of shifting feet. Reluctant. Uneasy. But obedient. The pressure in the air eased slightly. The girl remained still, her heart beating faster now. This was new. Different. Dangerous in a way she did not understand. The footsteps resumed. Closer. She could feel the presence now, standing just in front of her. Waiting. She kept her gaze fixed on the ground. If she did not look, it might pass. If she did not react, it might leave. But it did not. Instead, the faint sound of fabric shifting. Then, a soft thud as something was set down beside her. She flinched, her body tensing. Still, she did not look. Not yet. Not until she was forced to. And then, the unthinkable happened. The figure in front of her moved. Not away. Not back. Down. Kneeling. Right there in the dirt. In front of her. The world seemed to tilt. Because that was not how this worked. Not for her. Not ever. The human who knelt. He was nothing remarkable at first glance. If anything, he was the sort of man people overlooked without thinking. A passing traveler among many. Another weary soul moving from one place to the next in search of something better or simply something different. His cloak was worn, its edges frayed from long use. Dust clung stubbornly to his boots, layered thick from miles of unpaved roads. A leather pack rested against his back, its straps pulled tight, as though everything he owned fit within its modest confines. There were no gleaming weapons at his side, no polished armor to suggest rank or status. No insignia marked him as someone of importance. Just a man. Humans. Ordinary. Fragile. In a world where strength often decided worth, he should have been unremarkable. And yet, when he spoke, people listened. Move. The word was simple, quiet, unadorned by threat or anger. Yet it carried. It cut through the lingering laughter like a blade through cloth, not with force but with certainty. For a moment, no one reacted. The villagers exchanged glances, their amusement faltering. The man did not look imposing. He did not stand taller than the rest, nor did he raise his voice. But there was something in the way he stood. Something steady, unyielding, as though the world might push against him, but he would not move unless he chose to. Move, he repeated. Not louder, not harsher, just final. And the crowd shifted. Reluctantly, uneasily, but they moved. Boots scraped against stone, benches creaked as people adjusted their seats. The small circle of laughter parted, leaving a path where there had been none. The girl did not see this. Her gaze remained fixed on the ground, her body still locked in the moment before, the crushed bread beneath the boot, the echo of laughter still ringing in her ears. She did not understand what had changed. Only that something had. The man stepped forward, crossing the space that others avoided. He did not rush, did not hesitate. Each step was measured, deliberate. As though he had all the time in the world. As though the distance between them mattered. And perhaps it did. Because this was not just a matter of steps. It was a crossing, a boundary, an invisible line that no one else had dared to step over. The space where the girl existed. The space people pretended was not part of their world. He entered it without hesitation. She felt him before she saw him. A shift in the air. A presence that did not carry the usual sharp edge of mockery or disdain. Her body tensed instinctively, shoulders tightening as she braced for what would come next. Experience had taught her this much. Kindness was often a prelude. A trick. A way to lower her guard before the real blow landed. She had learned not to trust it. Not anymore. He stopped a few steps away. Close enough that she could hear him breathe. Close enough that she could feel the faint warmth of his presence. Still, she did not look up. Looking invited attention. Attention invited pain. She waited. For the shove. For the kick. For the laughter to return. Instead, there was movement. Not toward her. Not away. Down. The soft sound of fabric shifting. The dull thud of something placed gently on the ground. And then, a stillness. It was wrong. Everything about this was wrong. People did not come closer to her. They kept their distance. They threw things from afar. They spoke about her, not to her. But this man, he had stepped into her space. And now, he was nailing. She could feel it without seeing it. The change in height. The shift in presence. He was no longer towering over her. No longer looming. He had lowered himself. To her level. The concept was so foreign that her mind struggled to grasp it. Slowly, cautiously, she lifted her gaze. At first, only a little. Just enough to see his boots. Worn leathers. Scuffed and cracked. Dust clinging to every seam. They were close. Closer than anyone's had been in a long time. Her gaze moved higher. To his knees pressed against the dirt without hesitation. To his hands resting calmly before him. Empty. Open. Not clenched. Not threatening. And then, his face. He was older than she had expected. Not old but not young either. Lines traced faintly at the corners of his eyes, not from anger or strain, but from something softer, something that suggested he had smiled often once. His expression now was neutral. Not cold. Not warm. Simply calm. And his eyes. They held none of the things she was used to seeing. No disgust. No amusement. No fear. He looked at her as though she were simply there. As though her existence required no judgment. As though she did not need to be anything other than what she was. It unsettled her more than any insult ever had. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The marketplace, which had once been filled with laughter, had fallen into an uneasy quiet. People watched. Of course they did. They always watched. But this time their silence was different. Curious. Uncertain. As though they were witnessing something they did not understand. The man reached for his pack. The movement was slow, deliberate. He did not break eye contact. Did not give her reason to fear sudden motion. Still she flinched. She could not help it. Her body reacted before her mind could catch up, muscles tightening as she prepared to pull away. He noticed. Of course he noticed. But he did not comment. Did not react. He simply continued. His fingers worked the straps loose, the leather creaking softly under the strain. The pack shifted slightly as he set it down between them. A barrier, or perhaps an offering. He opened it. The faint rustle of cloth followed. Then, a scent. It hit her before she saw anything. Warm, rich, overwhelming. Fresh bread. Cooked meat. Her stomach clenched so sharply that it almost doubled her over. Her breath caught, her entire body going still as the smell filled her senses. It was too much. Too sudden. Her mind struggled to process it, to believe it was real. He pulled out a bundle wrapped in cloths. Carefully, reverently, as though what lay inside mattered. He unfolded it slowly, the fabric peeling back to reveal its contents. Bread. Soft. Not stale. Not hardened by time and neglect. Fresh. And beside it, meat. Still slightly warm, juices glistening faintly in the dim light. The scent intensified, curling around her, filling every empty space inside her. Her eyes widened. The faint ember glow brightened, flickering with sudden intensity. Hunger surged. Violent. Overwhelming. For a moment, everything else faded. The crowd. The man. The world. There was only the food. And the desperate, aching need for it. Here. The word broke through the haze. She blinked, her focus snapping back. The man held the food out toward her. Not tossing it. Not dropping it at her feet. Offering it. His hand was steady. Unshaken. She did not move. Could not. This was wrong. This was a trick. It had to be. Nothing in her experience told her otherwise. People did not give. Not like this. Not to hers. Her gaze flickered from the food to his face, searching for the catch. The hidden mockery. The moment when his expression would twist, when the laughter would return. But there was nothing. Just patience. Eat with me. The words were soft. Simple, but they struck her harder than any insult ever had. Eat with me. Not take it and go. Not eat it quickly before someone took it away. With him. Together. The concept felt foreign. Dangerous. Her fingers twitched at her sides, the urge to reach out battling with the instinct to retreat. Why? The word slipped out before she could stop it. Her voice was rough, unused. Barely more than a whisper. It cracked under the weight of her confusion. Why would he do this? Why her? Why now? The man did not hesitate. Because you're hungry. That was all. No grand explanation. No hidden motives. Just a simple truth. As though it were obvious. As though it were reason enough. Her mind reeled. It did not make sense. Nothing about this made sense. Around them, the crowd stirred. The silence broke, replaced by uneasy murmurs. She's dangerous, someone said, their voice edged with warning. She's a dragon, another added, louder this time. You shouldn't be so close. The word spread quickly. Dragon, monster, other. The familiar labels returned, clinging to her like shadows. The man glanced over his shoulder. Slowly, casually, as though their words carried no weight. Then it's fortunate, he said, that I'm not afraid of dragons. The statement hung in the air. Simple, unapologetic. A few people scoffed, shaking their heads. Fool, their expressions seemed to say. Others fell silent, watching, waiting, for something to go wrong. The girl remained frozen. Her gaze flickered once more to the food. So close. Close enough that she could see the texture of the bread, the slight tear along its edge. Close enough that she could smell the meat, rich and heavy, promising relief. Her stomach twisted painfully. Her body leaned forward, almost without her permission. No, it's a trick. It has to be. But hunger did not care about tricks. Hunger did not care about pride. Hunger did not care about anything except survival. Her hand lifted. Slowly, trembling. Every movement felt heavy, as though the air itself resisted her. She expected him to pull back. To laugh. To prove that this was all a game. But he did not move. Did not flinch. He simply held the food steady. Waiting. Her fingers brushed his. And she froze. Time seemed to stop. Her breath caught in her throat, her entire body locking in place as she waited for the inevitable. Pain, rejection, disgust, something, anything. But there was nothing. No sudden movement. No harsh grip. No push. Only warmth. His hand was warm. Not burning. Not threatening. Just a warm. The sensation was so unexpected that it startled her more than anything else. She had grown used to cold. To roughness. To hands that shoved and struck. But this was different. Her mind struggled to process it. For a moment, she simply stared. At his hand. At hers. At the point where they touched. Then, instinct took over. She snatched the food from his grasp, pulling it close as though it might vanish if she hesitated. And then, she ate. There was no grace in it. No restraint. She tore into the bread, biting hard, barely chewing before swallowing. The softness almost overwhelmed her, so different from the stale scraps she was used to. The meat followed. Rich, savory, filling her mouth with flavor so intense it almost hurt. Her body reacted instantly, her hunger surging in response, demanding more. Vaster. She ate like someone who feared the food might be taken away at any moment. Because it always had been. Because it always could be. Tears slipped down her face. She did not notice at first. Did not understand. Her focus was entirely on the food, on the desperate need to fill the emptiness inside her. But they came anyway. Hot, unbidden, tracking lines through the dirt on her cheeks. Her shoulders shook slightly, though she could not have said why. Relief. Shock. Something deeper. Something she did not have words for. The man did not interrupt. Did not comment. He simply watched for a moment. Then quietly he reached into the bundle and took a piece for himself. He ate slowly, calmly, as though this were the most natural thing in the world. To sit beside her, to share a meal, together, the crowd watched. Of course they did. But the laughter did not return. Not this time. Something had shifted. Something subtle, but undeniable. They had expected a spectacle, a failure, a moment of confirmation that the girl was exactly what they believed her to be. A monster. Instead, they saw something else. A man and a girl, waiting, side by side. No fear, no mockery, no distance. Just two people sharing food. It was a small thing. Insignificant perhaps in the grand scheme of the world. But here, in this place, it was something entirely new. The girl finished the food too quickly. It was never enough. It was never enough. But the sharp edge of her hunger dulled, replaced by a heavy, unfamiliar sensation. Fullness, not complete, not lasting, but real. For the first time in days, the gnawing emptiness eased. She slowed, her breathing uneven, her hands still clutching the last remnants of the meal. Her gaze lifted, cautiously, to him. He was still there, still nailing, still calm, as though he had nowhere else to be, as though this moment mattered. To him, she did not understand. But for the first time, she did not feel the need to run. And around them, the world had changed. Not in hers, not yet, but in them. And sometimes, that was where change began. The fire that remembered. Days passed. At first they passed slowly, measured not by the sun's rise or fall but by the fragile rhythm of something new, something uncertain, something that had no name because the girl had never known it before. Routine. Not the desperate, scraping rhythm of survival she had lived by for so long, where each moment was dictated by hunger and fear, by the need to find the next scrap before her strength failed. This was different. Subtle, quiet, and yet it changed everything. She stayed near the marketplace. Not hidden at its edges anymore, half concealed in shadow, ready to flee at the first sign of attention. Not crouched in alleyways, waiting for opportunity to pass unnoticed. No, now she lingered. She sat near the outer tables, still keeping her distance, but no longer entirely apart. She moved through the space with cautious steps, her gaze low but not always fixed to the ground. She was still watched. That did not change. It could not. People's eyes followed her as she passed, curiosity mingling with old habits of suspicion. Conversations faltered when she came too close. Some still turned away, pulling their children nearer, whispering quiet warnings. But fewer laughed. The sharp, cutting mockery that had once followed her every step faded, replaced by something softer. Uncertainty. And uncertainty, she would come to learn, was better than cruelty. The man Elias, as she had eventually learned to call him, remained. He did not disappear the way others did. Travelers often passed through, their presence temporary, their kindness fleeting if it existed at all. But he stayed, as though the broken edges of the village were reason enough to linger. As though leaving had never truly been an option. He did not claim a place for himself. He did not push his way into the lives of the villagers, nor did he demand their attention. He simply existed, much like she had once done, but differently. Where her existence had been quiet, careful, shaped by the need to avoid notice, his was steady. Unyielding. He helped when help was needed. A broken cart wheel repaired without expectation of payment. A heavy load carried for an aging farmer. A simple word offered to those who needed it, even when they did not realize they did. And when it came to hers, he did not hover, did not treat her like something fragile or dangerous. He did not watch her every movement, nor did he offer pity that might have felt like another form of distance. Instead, he included her. In small ways. Quiet ways. Ways that did not draw attention but mattered all the same. When he had food, he shared it. Not as charity, not as obligation, but as though it were the most natural thing in the world. They ate together often, sitting side by side at the edges of the marketplace. Sometimes they spoke, Sometimes they did not. Silence, she learned, did not always have to be empty. When he did not have food, he taught. Not in long lectures or complicated explanations, but in practice, in action. This, he said one morning, crouching beside a cluster of low-growing plants beyond the village's edge. You can eat. She watched carefully as he demonstrated, pointing out the subtle differences between what was safe and what was not. Look at the leaves, he instructed. The shape matters, the smell matters. If you're not sure, don't risk it. She nodded, committing each detail to memory. Later, he showed her how to trade. It was a strange concept to her. Giving something to receive something else. She had always taken what she could when she could. But this required trust. Interaction. He guided her through it. Hold it out, he said, nodding toward the small bundle of herbs she had gathered. She hesitated, her fingers tightening slightly around the stems. They won't take it from you, he added quietly, not unless you offer. Slowly, she extended her hand. The vendor, an older woman with sharp eyes and a perpetually pursed mouth, watched her for a long moment. Then with a small, almost reluctant sigh, she reached out. Coins exchanged hands. It was a simple transaction. Unremarkable. But to the girl, it felt like crossing a bridge she had never known existed. She did not become part of the village. Not fully, not quickly, but she became something else. Something closer. Something that did not need to hide. And in that space, something within her began to change. The hunger remained. It always would. But it no longer consumed her entirely. It no longer defined every thought, every movement. There were moments, small, fleeting, when she felt something else. Curiosity, caution, even sometimes a quiet sense of ease. It was unfamiliar, uncertain, but it was real. And then, the storm came. It gathered slowly at first, a dark line along the horizon that most people ignored. Storms were not uncommon. Rain was a blessing more often than a threat. But this one felt different. The air grew heavy, thick with the promise of something more than rain. The wind shifted, carrying with it a distant rumble that seemed to echo through the ground itself. The girl felt it before she saw it. A tension, a tightening in her chest. Not fear, not yet, but something close. She stood at the edge of the marketplace, her gaze fixed on the horizon. The clouds rolled in dark and heavy, swallowing the fatting light of the sun. The world seemed to hold its breath. And then, they came, not from the storm, but ahead of it. Bandits. They rode in hard and fast, their presence announced by the thunder of hooves and the harsh shouts that cut through the evening air. They were not subtle. They did not need to be. Fear moved faster than any warning. The villagers froze. For a heartbeat. Two. And then chaos erupted. Bandits. The cry spread like fire, igniting panic in its wake. People scrambled, abandoning tables, dropping food, pulling children close. Doors slammed shut, windows shuttered, whatever meager defenses the village possessed thrown up in desperate haste. But it was not enough. It was never enough. The bandits swept into the village with practiced ease, their movements coordinated, their intentions clear. Blades gleamed in the dim light. Torches burned bright, their flames flickering wildly in the growing wind. They were not here to pass through. They were here to take. To strip the village of what little it had. And the villagers. They had nothing to stop them. The girl stood at the edge of the square, her body tense, her instincts screaming at her to run. Hide. Disappear. Survive. That was what she knew. That was what she had always done. But her feet did not move. Because he was there. Elias. He stood in the center of the chaos, unarmed, unarmored, and utterly still. It made no sense. Everyone else was retreating. Fleeing. But he stepped forward. Into the opens. Stay back, someone shouted, grabbing at his arm. You'll be killed. He did not pull away. Did not argue. He simply shook his head. Maybe, he said. The word was quiet. But it carried. Not fear. Not bravado, just acceptance. As though the possibility of death did not change what needed to be done. The girl watched him, her heart pounding. Not with hunger. Not this time. This was different. Stronger. Hotter. It spread through her chest, tightening her throat, making it hard to breathe. The bandits advanced. One of them laughed, the sound harsh and sharp. Look at this, he called, gesturing toward Ilias, a hero. More laughter. Cruel. Confident. They had seen this before. Foolish men who thought they could stand against them. It never ended well. A blade was drawn. The metal caught the dim light, flashing briefly before settling into something darker. The distance between them closed. Step by step. The girl's breath quickened. Run! The instinct screamed louder now. Run! This is not your fight. This is not your place. Survive. But her body refused. Because something else was louder. Something that had been growing quietly beneath the surface. Something she had not understood. Until now. A torch arced through the air. Thrown carelessly. It struck the ground near the market stalls, flames licking at the dry wood, catching quickly. Fire! The villagers cried out, fear sharpening into desperation. And in that moment, something inside her broke. Or perhaps, it awakened. The heat came first. Not from the fire outside. From within. It surged through her veins, sudden and intense, stealing the air from her lungs. It burned, but not like before. Not like the painful, uncontrolled burst she had struggled to suppress. This was different. Focused. Powerful. Alive. Her breath caught, her body trembling, not from weakness, but from the sheer force of it. For so long, she had feared this feeling. Fought it. Buried it. Because it had always come with pain. With loss of control. With the certainty that if anyone saw, it would only make things worse. But now she did not push it away. She did not try to stop it. She embraced it. The heat responded. It surged higher, brighter, filling every empty space inside her. For the first time, it did not feel like a curse. It felt like strength. Her chest expanded, her lungs filling with air that seemed too hot to contain. Her vision sharpened, the world snapping into focus with startling clarity. She could see everything. The fear in the villagers' eyes. The cruel confidence of the bandits. Ilias standing alone between them. And without thinking, she stepped forward. Her breath left her in a rush. And with it, fire. It roared into the night, a torrent of flame that surged from her lips, bright and fierce and undeniable. Gasps echoed through the square. The flames arced outward, not wild, not uncontrolled, but directed. Purposeful. They formed a barrier between the villagers and the bandits, heat radiating outward, forcing the attackers to halt. To retreat. The sudden blaze shattered their confidence. This was not what they had expected. Not a village that fought back. Not like this. The girl stepped forward again, her body steady, her movements sure. Her eyes burned bright as twin suns, the ember glow now a blazing inferno. The faint scales along her skin shimmered in the firelight, no longer hidden, no longer denied. She did not tremble. Not anymore. The bandits hesitated. For the first time. They looked uncertain. Another burst of flame followed, sharper this time, closer. A warning. The message was clear. Live or burns. They did not stay. One by one, then all at once, they turned. Retreating. Fleeing. The thunder of hooves faded into the distance, swallowed by the approaching storm. Silence followed. Heavy, thick, uncertain. The fire died down slowly, the flames receding until only embers remained. The girl stood in the center of it all, her chest rising and falling with each breath. The heat within her began to fade, leaving behind a strange, hollow quiet. And then, she realized they were staring. All of them. The villagers. Every eye fixed on her. Not laughing. Not shouting. Just watching. The weight of it pressed down on her, familiar and yet entirely different. Her confidence faltered. Her shoulders tightened. The old fear crept back in. Had she gone too far? Had she shown them too much? Would the laughter return? Would the stones follow? Her gaze dropped, her hands curling slightly at her sides as she waited. For rejection. For anger. For the inevitable. And then, a hand rested on her shoulder. She flinched, her head snapping up. Elia stood beside her. Close. Steady. Unafraid. You did well, he said. The words were simple, but they grounded her, pulling her back from the edge of her fear. She searched his face, uncertainty still lingering. Are you afraid? She asked. The question was quiet. Vulnerable. Because if he was, if even he saw her as something to fear, then everything would fall apart. But he only smiled. Softly. I told you, he said, I'm not afraid of dragons. The tension in her chest eased just a little. Around them, the villagers stirred. Whispers rose, not sharp, not cruel. Something else. Something new. Respect. It was fragile. Uncertain. But it was there. The girl looked down at her hands, faint warmth still lingering in her skin. For so long, her hunger had defined her. Controlled her. Shaped every part of her life. But now, for the first time, it felt different. Not a curse. Not a burden. But a part of her. A memory. And as she stood there beside the human who had knelt instead of laughed, she understood. Not everything. Not yet. But enough. Enough to know that she was no longer alone. Enough to know that she did not have to hide. Enough to know what it meant to belong. And